Welcome to another episode of the Everyday Experiences podcast, where we uncover potential design improvements in the world around us by exploring one frustrating experience at a time. I'm your host and chief observer, Jeff Wilson, based out of Auckland, and joining me today is special guest Kim Goodwin, based out of San Francisco. She's a well-known design and product leadership consultant, conference speaker, and author of Designing for the Digital Age. And today, we'll be talking about an experience I've been eager to cover since the beginning, the design of hotels. But first, it's good to meet you, Kim.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jeff.
So again, what got us into this, and for everybody listening, is you had some images of a recent hotel stay from digital remotes to, I think it was showers and things like that. And I was like, yes, I love when people start talking about things that aren't just websites and apps. So reached out, very glad to have you. This is great. I'm excited.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I have sort of a long history of posting hotel showers and other things to the point where people now send them to me, just because in the before times, pre-COVID, I would spend about half of each month traveling. And so let's just say I've encountered a lot of hotels. So anything I say today is not from the perspective of designing the hotel. It's from the perspective of staying in it.
As people have probably know, if they've listened to this before, and if you haven't, this is a very speculative, exploratory kind of podcast. So we'll just randomly pick a spot and go with it. But in this case, because you had a specific starting point of that shower, for example, let's go into that, because I can share the images on social media afterwards and talk about what that was.
Sure. Well, I think showers were a thing that I happened to notice because, well, I don't know about you, but I sort of have a hierarchy of needs that I want out of a hotel room, right? One is, can I get a decent sleep? Two is, can I take a decent shower without freezing or scalding myself in the morning when I'm groggy and using unfamiliar shower controls? And it turns out that I was seeing a pattern in, I guess you'd call them boutique hotels or hotels that are trying to be kind of fancy in some way. And unlike your average Marriott or whatever, they all have these funky shower controls that are hard to figure out because there's too many knobs and too many shower heads. And even worse, they're inevitably positioned in such a way that you can't turn on the shower without standing under the water, which, maybe not the way I want to start my morning with ice cold water or scalding water hitting my body.
Yeah, you can't just reach in there and maybe get a long pole or something, reach in, try to tap it and run away.
Oh, I mean, you should see the dance I do sometimes, trying to reach around the edge of the shower and grab it. And oh yeah, it's always entertaining.
So boutique ones especially, I mean, is that just because of the dials that they have? They just try to make it look really flashy and elegant and stuff, and therefore it gets kind of hard to use? Or is it just that the controls themselves are just a mystery in terms of how you turn, twist, pull, whatever it might be?
Well, I mean, I think there are brands of hotels, like some of the big chains that we have in the United States, for example, Marriott, Hyatt, and so on. They're mostly about being kind of a reliable, predictable experience, right? And so they may be a little on the bland side, and they certainly still make design mistakes, but you won't usually find really weird stuff there. But a hotel that is trying to have a personality, well, sometimes the personality is a little peculiar. So, for example, I was staying at the W Hotel in Washington, D.C. once, and it's located right by the White House. And so there's all sorts of little references to DC politics. And every room has on the bed a set of pillows. And there's a pillow in the center that is half of a president's head from about the nose up. So it's the top half of a president's face. And so it's a little strange to walk into your room and see Bill Clinton in your bed. It's just not the experience I want in a hotel.
There's some other kind of joke in there that we'll just let your mind think of that.
We're just going to let that one lie. Yes. But, there were all sorts of other weird little touches about this. So in the bathroom in this particular hotel, you go and you sit down on the toilet, if that's a thing that you do. And right across from you is this wallpaper that's, I don't know, some sort of fancy black and white illustration, whatever. But it's done in such a way that it looks like someone has poked a hole in the wallpaper and is staring straight at you.
Okay.
And the goal of this is to, I don't know, make you uncomfortable while doing your business or what? It was just a strange design choice, right? Yeah. So it just makes me wonder if the people who design hotels ever actually stay in them sometimes.
Actually, that's a really interesting point, because now I'm thinking, I wonder if people ever do stay in their own hotels in the sense of, it's a long shift and they got to work the next morning. And sometimes I just need to stay overnight because I wasn't meant to work morning and night, but now I have to. So I wonder how many opportunities, even just like the front staff, like the front desk staff, I wonder how often they actually do that. And if they do
Mm.
notice anything about that, and do they actually recommend anything after that?
I don't have actual knowledge of this. Someone told me, so it could be totally wrong. I have heard that I think it's the Four Seasons, which is a fairly high end hotel chain. Maybe it's the Fairmont, one of the high end chains. I've heard that when they hire new staff, they actually give them a free stay in one of the hotels so that they experience what a high end hotel is supposed to be
Hmm.
like. I don't know if it's true, but it does make a certain amount of sense if you're a high end organization to try to do that. But, it's so often not about the hotel staff, although certainly the staff is part of the user experience, right? It's the weird stuff is more often the design. I will say more often than not, I find the hotel staff is really helpful. There's a hotel in Cambridge, Massachusetts that I stayed in a number of times. And let's just say it was often enough that I would walk in the door with my suitcase and they'd say, "Hey, Miss Goodwin, how you doing?" And they just knew who I was. And that was kind of nice, if I'm spending that many nights away from home, to at least have some people I recognized and could chat with.
Yeah, they become a surrogate family.
Yeah. Well, that's a sad thought. But it is the sort of personal touch. And like that particular hotel, every once in a while they would just leave a little something in my room, just, "Hey, thanks for staying with us so often." And, the manager would write a note and there would be, I don't know, local chocolate or something. And, it wasn't a super fancy hotel or anything. It was just, "Hey, we've noticed you've stayed with us often." It didn't feel canned, if you know what I mean,
Mhm.
like some of those insincere, "Thanks for staying with us. We do this the 17th time. Everyone like you stays with us." It just seemed a bit random and a bit genuine, which made it nice. So not all hotel UX is terrible stuff.
And maybe it's good to start out that way. We'll start out above the line and we'll dip down eventually. But I guess actually that's a really good point, because what I was curious about is how often do people have that one bad experience or particularly good experience and they actually remember it for years on end, and that could actually drive whether or not they'd stay there again.
For sure.
In this case, you've named off a few hotels that you've specifically remembered from kind of negative things to kind of super good positive aspects, which basically answers that question. Because what I was thinking is, let's say you had a hotel in a city with like high tourism or high travel, you
Mhm.
you might think as an owner in terms of measurement and values. I have such a high turnover, such a high unique visitor rate. If one of them has an issue, I don't necessarily need to do anything about it because they're not going to stay here for years to come. They'll forget about it. But in this case, some of your examples are, even if you stayed there just one time for maybe a few days, you've now remembered what that was like. And that actually could shape your shopping decision later on when you're going to book
Yeah.
years from now and go, "Hey, you know what? I don't really want to stay there ever again." Or, "I really like that place. I wonder if the manager's still working there. I'd love to chat to him again."
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think some of these things certainly do, for me at least, shape that decision. So the W in DC, right? Whatever pillow they throw on the bed, with maybe one or two exceptions, wouldn't change my mind about staying there. But I didn't even tell you one of the other weird things, which is that the shower is enclosed in glass
Hmm.
and it's wide open to the rest of the room.
Oh.
So, I mean, lots of people are staying there alone, but even so, that feels a little exposed and weird. But if you're staying with your partner or whatever, do you really want them watching you shower? Maybe. I don't know if that's your thing, but
Yeah. And half the time you have just friends and family and
yeah, exactly. So, you certainly couldn't share a room with a friend unless you were really good friends, or, didn't have any body issues or whatever. But there's just a lot of interesting choices that people make. And, sometimes I think about being the nerd that I am, can I sort of categorize some of the issues in hotel UX? Like there's creepy UX, there's discriminatory UX, there's UX that interferes with my goals, like getting sleep. There's UX that's just weird. And occasionally there's UX that's pretty good, that's surprisingly thoughtful. And, those are pretty memorable too.
so maybe we'll go in the backwards order of, we'll get those nice juicy ones at the end of creepy and discriminatory, because I think those would be like some of the big highlights. So maybe just interrupting first, because as you mentioned the hierarchy of needs of sleep and shower at a minimum, right? Mainly sleep. I need to go there. I need to sleep well. Now, one of the things, this is just, there's me nitpicking on stuff. Do I bring my own pillow? Because depending on where I'm
Mm,
going, like if I'm flying somewhere, yeah, I'm not going to bring a pillow on a plane. But if I am like driving to another town and I know I'm going to stay there, or maybe I'm on a road trip, because you don't know what kind of people you're going to have staying there. There's going to be a huge variety. So you've got to
mhm.
kind of sometimes dabble the middle ground, I guess, a lot. Like, as a pillow that's not too firm, not too soft, we have to kind of get in the middle. But then if you have a strong preference for one of the other, there's not really anything they can do. They just go, "We've got one pillow type."
It depends on the hotel, though. It depends. That's actually a solvable problem. So I have seen a couple of solutions to it. One is, I would say they're sort of decent mid-range business hotels. I've seen a couple, I don't remember the names, that put a couple of different pillow types on the bed. There's also, some hotels will let you check a box and say, give me feather-free bed. And then in a posh hotel, there's a pillow menu,
Ooh.
which is we have 7 or 8 kinds of pillows, and you can call the concierge and have someone deliver it to your room. And, they have everything from like side sleeper pillows to super squishy ones, and they have a whole range. I mean, a little pretentious, but it's a solvable problem if you choose to, right? And so that, certainly we all make choices if we have the means to make those choices about the kind of hotel that we stay in, and what's important to us. And I think some are known for certain things and others are not.
That raised an idea in my head of a new business venture, which I actually hope people don't do. But it's kind of like the budget airline of hotels, where you get the most basic stuff, but everything's upgrade based. Like a Ryanair, if you've ever flown them in the UK, it's like, oh, well, this is our pillow menu. You get the most basic, thin, 1-inch deep pillow. But for X many dollars, you can buy the next level or the next level or the next level. Or we won't slam doors, or we won't do this, or we'll give you an extra light bulb if you just pay a little bit more.
Well, okay, but those experiences are all about having something that's bad enough to pay to avoid, right? Which I don't know. If I get to a strange city and I'm tired, I definitely don't want to deal with that. Some people
Yeah.
might, but it does make me think of. So you talk about comparing hotels to airlines. I will say there's something I can do on most airlines that I wish I could do in a hotel, which is pick my room. So if you look at an airline website that's at all decent, you can see where the seats are. You can see which ones are close to the galley or the bathroom, i.e. noisy. But in a hotel, you don't really know, is that room they're going to give me next to the elevator and noisy? Is it above the noisy bar? Is it next to the ice machine? And so these are all things that personally I would kind of like to be able to choose. Yeah, that's one of the things I've often wished for in hotel UX.
Would you pay in that sense for actually the ability to choose your room? Is that something that just you as a consumer would be interested in?
Well, I mean, hotels do this to some extent already, right? A lot of them will have a couple of room tiers, like they'll have a river view room or I don't know, what do they call it? A terrace view room, which usually means the parking lot or something. um, but they have a little bit of that structure already. So you already know you're getting some category. But within that category, you don't know it's going to be right next to the elevator. So you hear ding, ding, ding all night.
Yeah, and then I actually did have a recent one of that. We went to this kind of resort area, and it was called the Ocean View Room, and we saw the pictures. We're like, this is perfect. And we got there, and we found out like, oh, well, yeah, you have an Ocean View room, but it's an ocean view over top of this parking lot, over top of this little camp area, and then there's the ocean. And we're like, but your images on the website like make it look so like you can see the thing clearly. Like, oh no, that's the upgraded room.
That's where you're trading one part of the user experience for another, right? Which is there's some team that works on the website that's thinking, hey, how do I convert the best? Oh, I should use these sexy photos. And then that sets you up with the wrong expectation for some later part of the user journey, right? And so the hotel staff now has to deal with that frustrated guest. So this lack of kind of the journey level view, I think you mentioned earlier, is definitely a big problem in hotel UX as it is everywhere else, right? So if you don't set the expectations right early on, some later part of the experience becomes a problem.
Yeah, and then it's always the aspect of what will people actually complain about? What kind of things are happening that you wouldn't actually know? So, there's feedback surveys and things, but that requires people to actually go, I'm going to spend my time going out and writing this comment card or this thing online and telling you
Yeah.
about this issue, or just going "Arr!" and just throwing it down and just walking out of the hotel the next day at checkout and just not saying a word. And you never know. You think everything's peachy keen.
And there's so many of the things in the minor annoyance category, right, that you'd never complain about, but they don't help. Like on the topic of getting good sleep, there's always annoying noises and lights in hotel rooms, right? So there's always that mini bar fridge that makes the compressor noise. First thing I do in the hotel room, I unplug that sucker. If I
Yeah.
can reach the plug. Some of them hide the plug from me and I can't do it.
One of the first things I do is I unplug the alarm clock because for one, I've got an
Mhm.
alarm on my phone. I don't need it. It's just because I'm that kind of believer that the more ambient light you have in your room, the less good sleep you have. So I'm a big proponent of that. Those alarm clocks are usually like blinding white at night.
I'm with you on the lights, right? So another common one is If for some reason you had your do not disturb up and the housekeeping couldn't come in, they leave you a voicemail message and you see that blinking light all night. Or sometimes you'll have a hotel where the phone just has a red light that blinks for no reason. I am a weirdo. I travel with black electrical tape in my bag, so
Oh,
I can just
sweet.
cover those things up. I peel it off so the housekeepers don't have to, but that way it doesn't keep me awake next to the bed. So yeah, you're learning that I'm just a weirdo about travel things. That's fine.
Well, you're giving another weirdo tips on what to do. I'm like, I do have a roll of black masking tape. It might work.
Yeah. Well, another good trick is, how sometimes the curtains just won't quite close and there's some bright
Always.
light outside? You go in the closet and grab a pants hanger, clip, clip. That will keep the curtains closed.
Hey, this is now is turned into a life hack podcast. I like it. I like where this is going.
So anyway, but I don't complain about these just stupid little things to the hotel staff, right? Because it's not their fault. Nobody's going to go back and fix it. But there's so many things, and if you're traveling internationally, there's a bunch of stuff that is maybe going to be different from expectations, right? Like, I always feel sorry for people from Commonwealth countries who come to stay in U.S. hotels. Because if you drink tea, you are just out of luck.
Yeah.
Because all there is that coffee maker, and whatever water you boil in it is going to taste like nasty old stale coffee, right? So, it's about who is coming to your hotel and what are their expectations.
And that's a particularly fun note international. So for one, real quick, yeah, I don't like coffee. I drink tea. So yeah, hotel tea is always the most disgusting tea generally too.
Oh, it's horrible.
But on top of that, this is a thing I've seen in more of the US more than one time now, that as a person with international phone numbers and things now and addresses and billing, international billing addresses for my credit card and stuff, you go to book something in the US whenever I'm traveling home and you get that, oh, well, we don't accept that because we never thought about having it. We're a hotel, but yet we never considered somebody internationally booking and using a non-American phone number or a non-American address to put in this stuff and just bashing your way into whatever it is just to meet some requirement somewhere.
Oh, there's all kinds of that. I mean, just bad form design on hotel registration, deceptive booking practices like the one you encountered. There's so much of that stuff. There's the websites that for some reason require you to give yourself a label like Miss or Mr. or what have you, and thereby exclude lots of people who don't use those labels. There's so many form design issues for sure.
So with that, let's get into that deceptive pricing. The only one that I have on my head is I was talking to my other friend, and he talked about he uses booking.com because it's kind of like his own travel agent. He can do multiple trips, multiple hotels, multiple things in one platform. So he has one place to go with all of his tickets versus he was working with a hotel owner. And the hotel owner was complaining that, well, I don't see why people just don't go to our site and book it because then, we'll offer the same price as that other, and we don't need to give booking.com a cut of our profits.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't people just go to our site? And when he told me that, he basically said what she failed to realize was that idea that it's not just you. You're not the sole person. You're not the sole part of that trip. As we talked about the journey again, you're just one little aspect. And so for a traveler, it might actually be great to go to these other sites that give you good discounts, or at least the appearance of good discounts and things. So that's what I know from the pricing side. And naturally, you get some of those on, especially like sites like booking.com, 2 rooms left, book now. Some of those enticing kind of aspects to it to try to get you to get it. But what other examples do you have in your mind about deceptiveness?
And actually, on some of those, that number is just generated randomly, and it has nothing to do with how many rooms are actually available. So, we can talk about negative patterns another time. But on the pricing front, is interesting because I'm not sure everybody understands the trade-offs in going to someplace like an Expedia or whoever and booking, because you can better compare hotels and maybe you'll get a better rate, maybe not. I actually never use those because what happens is the hotel then disowns any responsibility for a problem with your booking, right? And if something goes awry, you're kind of stuck. You have to call the website and get them to deal with it because the hotel front desk often either can't or won't. And it's not always clear to me how much is can't and how much is won't. In some cases, I think really the systems that the hotel staff have to deal with are not set up to accommodate how people actually book rooms. Certainly there's stuff that's weird based on the back end IT, as is often the case in UX.
So what about other aspects, discriminatory UX in terms of hotels?
Sure. Well, I think there's tons of ways that hotels exclude people, right? From registration to, a form that maybe doesn't recognize your gender or something. Uh, Accessible hotel rooms. There's usually maybe one or two accessible hotel rooms in the place, and they are in the nastiest, noisiest, darkest corner of the hotel, inevitably. And why can't we just make hotel rooms at least more accessible by default,
Hmm.
right? There's a bunch of stuff you could do in the average hotel room that wouldn't make anyone else uncomfortable, but would make it accessible to a lot more people. And that's, lots of different kinds of accessibility, right? There's wheelchair accessibility. There's accessibility for people with low vision or anything else. There's all the scented cleaning products and feathers all over the place. And there's that kind of stuff that inconveniences a lot of people or can cause even bigger issues for folks. There's stuff that, as a white woman, I never noticed for a long time until someone pointed out to me that the hair products in most hotels don't work for black hair,
Interesting.
right? You'll end up with a frizzy mess, as I understand it. And does anybody think about that? I don't know that a lot of hotels are particularly focused on whether their products, their hair products, work for everybody. So, unless you really think about what's our audience and who's excluded by the choices we're making, as in any other kind of design, you got to make a conscious effort on that stuff. And a team that's not very diverse just isn't going to notice some of those things. Kind of like I never noticed that in a hotel until somebody pointed it out to me because it didn't affect me, right?
If there's a chance that if it was a very diverse side of things, would they buy their own kind of like hair products that would just be for them, or do you think there'd be some kind of middle ground? Just genuinely curious of what do you do?
I think it's like any other design problem, right? Which is build a diverse team and have them do inclusive research and ask people what has sucked about your experience staying in hotels and learn. And what hotels have felt great to you and really made you feel welcome and learn from that. It's just a matter of sitting down and listening to people
Hmm.
and not all people like you. They're very avoidable problems, I think. And, look, I know there's lots of supply chain considerations and all that other stuff, but that's where it comes down to the values, which is if you care enough about it, there are ways to make it happen
Yeah.
that aren't going to bankrupt you.
And then even thinking about earlier, you talked about the pillow menu. In some ways, I guess there could be something like that for maybe it's soaps and stuff. Like, hey, we have more
Yeah.
than this one option. Here's a list. Maybe actually on that note, it would be kind of interesting to go, would it be better to even stock a room with anything to start with? Or do you want to introduce a little bit of a pain in terms of, hey, we don't want to just presume and just give you the things that we think are good. Like, here's the run of the shampoo, conditioner, soap. But, yes, it takes you one extra step, but here's this variety you can choose from. Choose it. We'll bring it to you as fast as possible so that you don't really have to wait. So it's like introducing a pain to get choice.
Or, can you just stock some variety in the room to begin with, like the hotels that put a couple different types of pillows on the bed? Now, that has costs associated with it, especially if it's the sort of hotel that people tend to walk out with all the hair
Yep.
products in their bag. So, there are certainly trade-offs there. But yeah, are the teams there actually having those conversations? You know, there's plenty to gripe about in hotel experience, but I have had hotel experiences where it's clear that somebody put some thought into different aspects of the design. Like lots of us female identified people shave our legs. We can talk about whether that's a feminist thing to do or not. Don't want to have that discussion, but we do that in the shower. And if this is a thing you've ever tried to do, you know that bending over and reaching your ankle with water running over your head is just not a pleasant experience. And so I have occasionally been pleasantly surprised that a hotel shower has a little ledge where you can prop your foot up. And I think, oh, they must have had some girls on the design team, right? And so that's a little touch that I appreciate. There's a hotel in Boston on the waterfront that has a little ledge next to the door. So that situation where you're carrying a cup of coffee and maybe your laptop or something, and then you get back to your hotel room and you're like, oh, I have to fumble for my key. I guess I have to set something down on the floor to get it out. No, they have a convenient ledge there that's the perfect size for a purse or a coffee cup. And I just thought, oh, that's brilliant. Right. And so there are clearly people who have stayed in hotels involved in designing this hotel. And so that's one of the things I remember about the place.
Yeah, that I've got to go find a picture of that because that sounds brilliant. I'm like, Oh, it's one of those. I now wish every hotel I've ever stayed at. I'm like flicking through them all in my head. There's so many times that would have been amazing to have.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I tweeted a picture of it at one point because I was like, "Oh, this is clever." And then there's the kind of gimmicky stuff that I don't know, sometimes is entertaining. Like I've been to a couple of hotels where you can borrow a goldfish for the evening or something, just to have company in your room. Um, there's silly stuff like that. That's not really the stuff that matters. The stuff that matters is more, can I get good sleep, and is your internet too slow, and do I have to scan a QR code in order to turn off your weird television that's automatically on when I walk in the room? So, there's all that kind of stuff too.
And one last quick example going back to the shower is, that stool or the ledge, not only good for people shaving their legs in this case, but also anybody who can't stand up for extended periods of time or, has, risk of slipping and falling like that. You've got a way now that they can still use that shower safely.
Well, I mean, if it is actually done as a bench, yes. Sometimes there's actually just a little ledge big enough for your foot,
Oh, okay.
and it doesn't accomplish that. But I still think, oh, somebody put some thought into designing this. So, but yeah, the other thing I was thinking about is like safety in hotels. Do people really think about that? And is there a cover on that little peephole in the door? Because if not, can somebody look through it from the other side? That's creepy. I was actually in a hotel. I was surprised to have someone walk into my room thinking it was their room. They had a key to my room and they had just checked in. And so, there's an information system issue, right? That it shouldn't have allowed that to happen. That's a back end design issue, but it led to a safety issue. I'm like, who is this creepy man jumping into my room now?
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that story up because that happened to my dad a few years ago too. He went to somewhere, badged in, and then I was like, "Wait, there's somebody's bags and things." He's like, He's like, for him, what's less concerning that he got into somebody else's room is he had that immediate anxiety of, and he's probably listening to this. You can tell me if I'm wrong. He had that immediate anxiety of like, well, what if they see me? It's not just that I enter the room and I see that there's somebody else's stuff there, but what if this other person now sees, like, kind of the you've experienced then of actually going, I swear it wasn't me. Like, you immediately feel like the creep as this person who just wants to go to bed. But now you've done this thing and this person in the room's looking at you like you've just barged in and you're like, it wasn't me. So now you're just upset from all angles for the rest of the night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many ways in which, staying away from home can be a lovely experience or a really disconcerting one, or, mostly fine with the occasional annoyance we can laugh at. And it's quite a range.
And I always worry, I don't see them as often anymore, at least here. But there's a lot of those hotels I've stayed in the US that have like that door that separates two different hotel rooms too. That there's always
I
a
hate
little bit
those.
of
It's so
question.
noisy.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's noisy. And then also I'm just always like, how do I know it's really locked? Like, how do I know it's really secure that people aren't just going to get in there in the middle of the night?
Yeah, usually they're double doors.
Yeah.
So there's not a knob on the other side, but
Well, then think about that, right? Like you said, the double door. The only way I, as a traveler, would know that is if I tried to open it and looked inside and saw another door. But what if you're like, I want to just double check, and you open it and that you actually do see in the other room? Like, oh shit, I didn't.
yeah,
I swear I'm not. I just wanted to know.
that would be disconcerting. Yes.
Actually, you know what? And thinking about, I was wondering if you've had any insight on that. Using your badge for many things. It's not just getting in the room, but also a lot of hotels now, like you have to slide in your badge into like a little keyhole kind of thing, like a little digital reader to actually turn on your lights to get electricity and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's been an annoyance for us in terms of getting in and going, I have to keep this badge on me. I can't just leave one copy in the room, especially if we only have one copy and one of us wants to stay in the room and the other one wants to go, but we want to be able, the other one wants to get back in, but no, can't do that because you've got to take the badge out with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the argument for that, right, is energy conservation. It's a lot less common in the US than it is in Europe. However, another life hack for you, any hotel room key will usually work in those. So if you happened to not remember to return a hotel room key in a previous hotel, just stick that in your travel bag and you can use that for the light switch. Because it's usually just the piece of plastic that it's responding to and not anything encoded on the card. So, because, sometimes I want to charge a device or something while I'm at dinner and for it to be turned on, well, you need to have something plugged in. So anyway, silly life hack.
I like this.
Hotel UX and hotel hacks.
There's been things around, well, for one, talking about those keys, Self-checkout, I personally
Hmm.
love it when they have that. It's great when, especially, you could just either drop your keys into a box or just leave them inside the room and walk out and close
Yeah.
it. It's one less hassle, especially if you've got to rush to the next flight or whatever you've got to go. But then there's the opposite side of when you're checking in. Some of those places, especially in the more rural kind of areas or destination areas, where they only have like a check-in desk for a certain number of hours, and you better get
Hmm.
there right before then, or you're not getting in your room that night. Like if you have an unexpected travel delay, that's that thing of, well, as somebody who's done that before on a road trip, going, crap, we didn't expect for this thing to happen. How we don't know if we're going to get there. We need to floor it down the highway at unsafe speeds to try to make sure we get to our room, because that's the only place in town to stay. If we don't get there by 9, we're locked out. We're sleeping in our car. What do we do? And like
Yeah.
and especially like when you're in a place with no service either, because it's that kind of rural, you can't just call them and say, hey, I'm going to be late, can you leave a key somewhere? I don't necessarily have any ideas for how to solve for that. That's just one of those personal design issues that I've found.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you can, right? Sometimes they'll leave a key for you or something, and that's where I think the aspect of hotel UX we don't maybe think about as much is, there's your experience, but there's also the experience of the staff who work there, who
Mm,
deserve to have decent jobs and be respected by the guests, and so frequently have to deal with cranky people who are just jerks. And I should try to create a decent experience for the hotel staff, just because that's what you do for other humans.
yeah.
And and some of it comes down to, the financial model of the hotel industry gets in the way of that sometimes. Like, I personally don't really love somebody coming into my room when I'm gone during the day and like rearranging my toothpaste and stuff. And I'd kind of rather not have that happen. At the same time, if that housekeeper doesn't get to clean my room, then there's that much less work they get paid for doing that day in the US,
Mm,
right? And they're already paid so poorly. And how many guests actually remember to tip their underpaid housekeepers? And so, there's always an aspect of staying at a hotel that I think about, like, what's the impact on the staff? And gosh, wouldn't I rather stay at a hotel where I just know the staff is decently taken care of, and it's not my responsibility as a guest to make sure that they're paid a living wage? That's a factor of the decision to choose a hotel that we don't really talk about a whole lot. And it's hard to figure out as a guest, how is the staff treated in different places. You have to do a lot of work to figure that out.
and on that note, it's even interesting from, again, this international angle, is we don't tip in New Zealand for like, there's no restaurant tipping, there's none of that. We don't have that culture,
Mhm.
but yet, are they expecting it? Are they not? What are we supposed to do? And you get this weird kind of anxiety, because
Mhm.
nobody wants to outright say, we expect this or that from you. Who are you supposed to tip? It's a weird area. Don't really know.
And some hotels actually try to design that part of the experience, right? I stayed at a very high end hotel in Chicago one time, and they were very explicit at check in. Our staff is well paid. They don't
Hmm.
need to be tipped. And, the staff refuse tips and so on. And that's just, it's wrapped into the service and you pay for it in the room rate. Um, but they're very upfront about how their focus is taking care of the staff. So you don't need to.
Yeah, that's
Um,
nice.
but, that's not going to be typical in the hotel experience, right?
Yeah.
Um, but, it's complicated as a guest. How do you have a good experience? And also, how do you have a good experience without creating bad experiences for other people?
Yeah. So maybe to wrap this all up, let's take that, especially that kind of thought, and talk about values. It's one thing that one of my favorite lessons from you is that you are what you measure.
Hmm.
The things that you measure as a business conflict with the things that you say that you value. Oh, we value customers, we're customer obsessed, blah blah blah. But then the only thing you care about is new acquisitions. To be damned if anybody churns or leaves or anything like that, or how many hours they spend internally, but nothing about how long customers need to do this or how
Yeah.
much they're rating it. So I think the way I like to phrase it is, if you were to own a hotel, what kind of thing, and putting it out there, if you were to own a hotel, what kind of things do you think that would be interesting to measure to kind of help you guide the decisions you need to make? So thinking about all of the aspects, the creepy, the pricing aspect, the interrupting, like what kind of
Hmm.
things would help you as a new hotel owner to start looking at?
Sure. Well, I wouldn't focus on net promoter score.
Yay.
I wouldn't give people a row of 5 smiley frowny faces and say, how was my service today? I think that one aspect of measurement to consider is, what's the impact of measurement on the staff, for example?
Mhm.
So you want to make sure that you're not adversely impacting the staff by how you measure. But I would sit down with who are the kind of people I want my hotels to serve. And I would ask them what a good hotel experience is and what a bad hotel experience
Mhm.
is. And then I would measure against that. So, for example, how was your sleep? Did anything interfere with your sleep?
Hmm.
Did you feel safe in our hotel? I would ask those kinds of things, right? Um, did you feel like anything about your hotel or your experience wasn't welcoming of some aspect of who you are? I guess I would look for those kinds of things.
Do you think, as often people do, they get really excited by the question? Well, how do you guarantee that that's gonna turn into profit for me? Is this person who owns it? What do you kind of how do you shape that kind of conversation in that case?
I think that's not the kind of thing you can easily convince people
Yeah.
of ahead of time. You just have to show them the results. But if you can create memorably good experiences, right? The way I think about it is the way that you create superfans is to be unexpectedly good, right? To exceed people's expectations in some memorable way. They're going to remember your hotel. They're going to come back to it if they have the opportunity. They're going to tell other people about what a great experience it was. Likewise, if you are memorably bad,
Yeah.
they're going to tell people about that too.
So actually, here's another little challenging bit for that, because I think I heard it in another conference in the past year around delight in unexpectedly good. Now, if you're a frequent stayer of that hotel, maybe you're on business trips often to this one city, it's where the other office is, you go there all the time, you stay there all the time. After how many visits is that unexpected actually just expected now, where you've raised the
Mhm.
bar of what that is? So at
Sure.
that point, will that person be still looking for the next big thing, or will they just, as long as you keep delivering that, will they stay happy enough to keep visiting and keep talking about it?
Well, I mean, if you look at user experience as a whole, I think there are ways in which we keep raising the bar of those expectations, right? Today's unexpectedly good is the thing people will copy tomorrow.
Hmm.
And so you do have to come up with new things. I mean, I forget which hotel chain it was that started the warm chocolate chip cookie at check-in, but now all kinds of people have tried to replicate that, right? And some have better and worse chocolate chip cookies than others, but do you remember at this point which one it is? No, not so much. Do you remember the hotel where they remember your name? Yeah, probably. So, yes, I do think you have to escalate, but going back to that Cambridge hotel that I mentioned where, they remembered my name and then just every once in a while they would do a little something extra, right? They would occasionally find ways to be unexpectedly good. And I didn't expect that every time. It was more like, oh, cool, that's nice. Or, do they start to cut you slack if you need a little late checkout or whatever? They're like, yeah, of course, we'll let you check out late, whatever. Um, I think people start to get attached to places that they feel known, right? Feeling known is definitely a goal for people who use a service over and over again, right? They want to feel remembered and cared for.
Yeah. Well, with that, I think that's a great way to wrap up. So, outside of all the hotel life hacks we learned today, we've realized that hotel stayers have a hierarchy of needs, starting with getting a decent night's sleep. That interruptions and potential creepiness along those key moments, like all services, hurts that customers experience most. Most interestingly to me, we've called out some ways to deliver a more inclusive experience, all starting with having a more diverse team. And overall, recognize that the best way to create brand advocates is by being unexpectedly good and sometimes simply showing your customers that you know them. So, Kim, do you have any final thoughts on hotels? Any last minute things above or below the line?
I think there are lots of people who do actually work very hard to make thoughtful experiences in hotels, right? And they have constraints and organizational challenges that you and I don't know about.
Hmm.
And so it's not a knock against those people because I'm sure there are great designers working in service design and facility design and all of that. But from a guest perspective, with the unfortunately critical eye of a designer, it's hard not to notice some of those things. So I hope folks take that in the spirit in which it's intended.
Well, thank you, Kim. How might people reach you? How would you like them to reach you? Anything you'd like them to do?
Probably the best thing to do is just follow me on Twitter at Kim Goodwin.
And with that, folks, thank you for listening to this episode, and I hope you see the design of our everyday world in a new way. To see examples of what we were talking about today and to keep this conversation going, you can find and follow us at Everyday EXP Pod or myself at Jeff Wilson HCD. Please consider leaving us a rating and subscribing to the show on your favorite podcasting app and checking out our previous episodes. And as always, just remember, you don't have to have a fancy job title to start noticing and improving the everyday experiences wherever you work. Thanks, and we'll be on the air again soon. And getting to look at these bigger, broader questions. I love it. It makes me interested, but I'm hoping that in time can get, more people interested in talking about things that aren't just their website. So thank you for letting me rant.
Yeah, well, you let me rant about Hotel UX for an hour for no reason. So